classic Sonic. Love him or hate him, he's been around for quite some time for the past few years now, and perhaps a bit too long now that I think about it, ever since his re-debut with Sonic Generations back in 2011. A solid 3D Sonic game for sure, one filled with tremendous praise, even 12 years later, given its amazing level design and remaking fan favorites to fit both the boost formula speed and the classic style platforming. Classic Sonic as a whole was just a welcome addition to the modern era of Sonic, as it allowed fans to witness the origin story of the blue blur speed and what made him so lovable in the first place. Hell, back when this game released, I was just super giddy to see classic Sonic now in 3D, or rather 2.5D if we are being technical here, thrive in the 6th console generation alongside his more teenage-based counterpart, and it was just cool for Sega to bring something new to the table that made fans remember their first time playing this franchise. That and of course the Sonic Adventure games, gotta roll around through the speed of sound since I do got places to go after all. And since then, it seemed that Sega was starting to follow the money, so to speak, as after the debut of classic Sonic in Generations, Sega began to reinvent the wheel for Sonic in terms of providing that classical feel that was once what thrived for Sonic back in the 90s. Sure, some bizarre Sega collections were out there to experience the old classics, but they mainly wanted to test out the waters in a more modern approach. Thus enter Sonic Lost World, a game that really did a good job at least giving a unique Sonic experience despite being a Wii U exclusive, later ported to the PC a few years later, as it brought some of the charm that classic Sonic had once provided in its environmental design and atmosphere. Still feels off seeing modern Sonic in these sections considering he has run through the streets of Pagonia, but hey, it still was something rather refreshing. Then we enter 2017, where after Lost World and later Sonic Boom, Sega decided it was time to come back to the basics with the help of fan developers such as Christian Whitehead to then develop Sonic Mania, a game that was the reawakening of classic Sonic, where it was nothing but bringing back the 16-bit sprite work and giving it a nice modern polish. With rehashing and expanding old zones and reworking the mechanics of classic Sonic's movement, Sonic Mania was the perfect game to bring classic Sonic back in a time where Sonic was kinda at his lowest lows. Again, Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric exists and was met with very poor reception. Personally, Sonic Mania is easily one of my favorites because it was the classic Sonic experience that brought a lot of Sonic fans together at the time. With a cartoon tie-in series called Mania Adventures to the opening animation when booting the game up, you can see that there was a flavor to be had with this brand new classic Sonic experience, and that was pretty cool to look back to in 2017, and even now if you just grab it for $10. Sure, at times it can feel like it was pandering to the older audience who grew up with classic Sonic, but it was still a fun time to be had, so much so that Sega decided about a few months to almost a year later to give us a definitive version called Sonic Mania Plus, allowing new features and characters to return such as Ray the Squirrel and Mighty the Armadillo, also bringing their own cartoon tie-in series to boot. Sonic Mania is and will always be a good gateway to try out that classic Sonic experience, and it is something that I highly recommend you get if you never tried a Sonic game before. But around this time also, Sega not only decided to continue on with Sonic Mania, but also to bring back classic Sonic in not just another 2D Sonic game, but also in another 3D one, which yeah, we all know it to be none other than, well, Sonic Forces. Hoo boy. Say what you already know about Sonic Forces, this game indeed bombed, and bombed hard upon its initial release, so much that it's well known nowadays as the game that sparked the whole long versus short quill debate for modern Sonic. But with the reused environmental design of Green Hill Zone and Chemical Plant to the lack of a good writing and barely satisfying level design that ended too quickly, Sonic Forces also brought back classic Sonic onto the 3D space, which was both odd and at the same time concerning in terms of what the hell Sega was even thinking at the time. Classic Sonic in this game just didn't really fit, but in the eyes of Sega, they believed that hey, if classic Sonic was back in action, then this would help promote sales, especially seeing how well Sonic Mania was a few months back. Of course, we know that the end result here, Sonic Forces ended up being extremely bad of a Sonic game, but it did demonstrate the topic in question of if classic Sonic is being used way too much nowadays, and trust me, I think he is. Like, there's no doubt about that. After Forces, there was like a 5-year hiatus for Sonic as Sega pulled on all the brakes and thought long and hard for themselves on what they wanted to work on for Sonic moving forward. There was a live action movie which did extremely well back in 2020, getting a sequel 2 years later, and now a third movie slated for 2024, but nothing was really heard on the gameplay front for the Blue Dude until 2021, where we would finally see Sonic Frontiers in action, as well as classic Sonic with Sonic Origins Collection, which we also know turned out to be an extreme disaster with emulation failure, lack of proper porting, and just feeling like another classic Sonic cash grab, the same holding true for Origins Plus that released earlier this year. But hey, to give credit where credit is due on Origins Plus, they at least gave us classical Amy for the very first time, but for an additional price. And as Sonic Frontiers became like the best-selling 3D Sonic game to this very day since its release, Sega now decided to strap on their boots and ensure at least one more attempt at a 2D Sonic game, which at this point you kinda guessed it was another classic Sonic adventure by the name of Sonic Superstars, now being a fully modern and original experience that wasn't so much reusing old assets and graphical design, but instead opting for that 2.5D to 3D approach. And for what has presented so far, since it hasn't really released yet, it looks pretty great for a 2D Sonic game, and definitely important for the subgenre especially, but at this point is where I would like to admit that Sonic Superstars just doesn't really feel worth the time. And now hear me out before you throw away a comment in the comment section below saying, oh, he doesn't like Sonic Superstars because that's both as a concept and a game here. Oh, I'm all for it, baby. I am just happy to see another 2D Sonic game, that's for sure. But I just wish Sega would be a little bit more ambitious with this title as opposed to playing their bets safely here. Superstars as a whole, yeah, it looks like a brand new 2D classic Sonic experience, but the more you look at the level design and the controls as well as the animation that the classic gang have, it just feels like a regular classic Sonic game. Yeah, Sonic can now grind rail, do a shadow clone jutsu attack and other fun gimmicks, but there's nothing extra that makes this game feel appealing and, dare I say, worth the full price. The reason I even say this in the first place is because with how much content classic Sonic already has, good or bad, it seems that classic Sonic is just oversaturated to the point where I personally think that Superstars could have just been a 2D modern Sonic experience, which is something that has been done before and done right, such as the Sonic Rush games and Sonic Advance trilogy. These games basically brought the classic and modern elements of both 2D and 3D Sonic into the mix and bringing a unique platforming adventure that still stands at the testament of time. Look at Sonic Advance 2 and 3 on the GBA, for example, as despite what some have to say about these two games, they are still great experience to be had given their 2D-like structure, charm, and overall gameplay. Sonic Rush on the Nintendo DS back in 2005 is truly special in this case, as it was the progenitor to the boost formula and still managed to maintain those 2D roots with its level design, being a true balancing act of both modern and classic elements while also being ambitious in its own identity with a boost formula, a new playable character, and especially the music and environmental design, because those are still things that people enjoy to this very day. With classic Sonic back for Sonic Superstars, what more can you really do to make him stand out at this point? 2D platforming? Okay, but what else from there? Like, the traps and controls look about the same as before, the level design looks about the same as before, just with different themes and no Green Hill Zone this time around. Everything about Superstars really looks about the same as Sonic Mania or the original games, and that's a bit disappointing and exhausting as, yeah, classic Sonic is back for another 2D adventure, but it's the same 2D adventure done except made in 3D. Sure, take my money, Sega. Look, no disrespect to classic Sonic here, but I just think Sega could just continue on with their efforts with modern Sonic for the time being, especially with how good of a reception Sonic Frontiers has gotten so far. Like, I think it doesn't hurt not to give it a go at a Sonic Advance 4 or a proper Sonic Rush 3, because I genuinely think that that's what most Sonic fans would want out of an actual 2D Sonic experience at the end of the day, especially when you have to consider the fact that we rarely see modern Sonic in a 2D setting, and we can play the adverse effect here as well, where classic Sonic could be in a 3D setting like what we've seen with, for example, Sonic Robo Blast 2. But hey, comment down below your thoughts on whether or not you think classic Sonic is being overused by Sega and Sonic Team here, because I like to think so, but maybe you have a different opinion or maybe you like to agree, so if we can find that like mutual agreement at the end of the day as to whether, But hey, let me know your thoughts down below as to whether or not classic Sonic is being overused by Sega and Sonic Team at the moment, because I like to think so, but maybe you don't, and I like reading what you guys have in the comment section, even if it's, you know, not as respectable as I would like it to be, but it is what it is, because right now, I got other stuff in the works. I was thinking maybe Mario for next time, since it is only fair to talk about Mario after we've been talking about classic Sonic and 2D Sonic games, so we could do something like that with Super Mario Bros. Wonder, but that's gonna be for next time, because right now though, yeah, I'm gonna have to hide from the Sonic community for like the next few days, because I don't think you guys really enjoyed this one.